Very often people simply say, the Pope cannot be the Pope, because it says in the canon law that the heretic cannot be the Pope, and Pope Francis is a heretic, so therefore he can't be Pope. So we'll read here, Canon 188. This is the beginning. So this is chapter 2 on the loss of ecclesiastical offices. There's two ways to lose an office. One is to freely depart. The other one is to get booted out. It's really complicated stuff. You either leave on your own or you get kicked out. Those are the options. So so the first option is to leave on your own, called free resignation. The second option is to be coerced out, to be kicked out. What we're dealing with here is the first option, which is free resignation. The leaving on your own. So there's free resignation. And then there are rules of the canon law about resignation. Like supposing, for instance, I am the pastor of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and we're in normal times, and I really don't like you people. And so I write a letter, Dear Bishop of Louisville, Bishop Kurt, I quit. Sincerely, Father Pfeiffer. The church says, that's a nice letter. Where's the nearest wastebasket? Means nothing. Because there are some things you can't just quit. But then again, there are other things you might be able to quit. So there's rules of resignation. When you say, I quit, there are some offices you can't quit. The bishop has to approve of your quitting. Therefore, there has to be an approval that when you said, I quit, the bishop said, okay, you can quit. Now, so the first thing to get rid of in the canon law, what are the cases where you can say, I quit, and the bishop doesn't have to send you an approval letter that says, I approve of you quitting? Because there are some ways you can quit where the bishop doesn't have to approve. You just quit. And here they are listed in Canon 188. Canon 188. There's 8 different ways. Number 4 is the one that the Sedevacantists quote all the time. 8 different ways to quit. Free resignation. Any office becomes vacant upon the fact and without any declaration by tacit resignation, recognized by the law itself if a cleric does one of these 8 things. So that's when you leave, we don't have to send a letter that says he quit, his resignation has been accepted, therefore the post can be fulfilled. Because if I'm the pastor of Lady of Mount Carmel for 6 years, and then my term ends up in 2019, I quit in 2018, what happens when the new pastor comes? Who's the pastor? Because you've got 2 priests listed. Well, the guy in 2018 said he quit. What do we do? Well, is his resignation legal? Can we put a new pastor in? Well, there are 8 cases in which resignation is legal, even if you don't get an approval from the authority, from the bishop. Firstly, so any office becomes vacant upon the fact and without any declaration by tacit resignation recognized by the law itself if a cleric, firstly, makes religious profession with due regard to the prescriptions of Canon 584 concerning benefices. Because you see, when you remember, what's the most important thing in the world? St. Jerome says it. It's money. But what is a benefice? It's money. That's all it is. So understand, who gets the stipend? If you take a vow in religious life, you take a vow of poverty. You leave the religious benefice. Therefore, you don't get the money anymore, and you joined a religious institute, and you're not a member. You're no longer the pastor of St. Willibrod's parish. So, number 1, make religious profession with regard to the prescription of Canon 584. In other words, it didn't run away or do something immoral or illegal. Secondly, within the useful time established by law or legal provision lacking or determined by the ordinary that fails to take possession of the office. So, firstly, you become a monk. If you become a monk, you lose your religious office. Secondly, if you're assigned to be a pastor of an office and you never show up. So you're supposed to be in your office by June, and 2 years have passed, 3 years have passed, you never showed up. What are they going to do? You lost the office by tacit resignation because you never showed up. First, you left and became a religious. Secondly, they never showed up. Never even showed up to the office. You were supposed to be the bishop of the diocese, you were supposed to be the pastor of the parish, and the people were waiting and no priest ever showed up. That's considered tacit resignation. It means you quit freely of your own accord. Thirdly, when you accept an ecclesiastical office, which is incompatible. So I am going to be the permanent resident pastor of Lady Mount Carmel, living here in Kentucky for 24 hours a day and so on, and the permanent pastor of a church in Peking, China. Now, if I am in Peking, China, then I'm not here. And if I'm here, I'm not there. So it's those permanent residents. So if you were to take on 2 different permanent residences, then it's incompatible. Therefore, you're no longer the pastor. Or like, for instance, supposing you are the vicar and the pastor. You can be the pastor or you can be the vicar, but you can't be the vicar and the pastor. So you can be either one, but you can't be both. So the vicar would be the assistant. So any incompatible office. Fourthly, publicly defects from the Catholic faith. That means you left the church and you became an apostate and stopped being a Catholic, or you left the church and joined some Protestant heretical sect. Fifthly, you got married. If it contracts marriage, even if it's just a civil marriage. So if a priest goes and gets married, he's no longer the pastor. So firstly, become a monk. Secondly, never showed up to the place. Thirdly, they accept another office which is incompatible, that doesn't fit. Fourthly, publicly lapse in the Catholic faith. Fifthly, contracts marriage. Sixthly, joins the army. So if the priest joins the army against the prescriptions, then he is no longer the pastor. Seventhly, he dumps his ecclesiastical habits. So that's probably a lot of priests. He disposes his ecclesiastical habit on his own authority and without just cause, unless having warned by the ordinary. Like for instance, if you're a pastor in the Eastern Bloc countries under persecution, then you're not going to be wearing your clerical garb. But if you're not in the place of persecution, you don't have the right to not wear your clerical garb. And then within a month, he doesn't go back after being warned. So the bishop says, get your cassock back on, get back in the place. If he doesn't get his cassock back on and get back to the church, he quit. 1 month. Then seventhly, and then eighthly, if he deserts illegitimately the residence to which he is bound. So the eighth thing is, the guy just leaves in the middle of the night, you don't know where he went. Notice all 8 of them have one thing in common. The individual priest, or bishop, or pope, quit on his own free will and left. So the 8th possibly left, you don't even know where he is, he's just gone. He became a monk. He got rid of his clerical garb. One of the 8 is number 4, which is to publicly lapse from the Catholic faith. That means you tacitly left your office. Now, if someone being a heretic, assuming they are a heretic, which is another problem, if someone being a heretic made him no longer able to be a priest or a bishop, then that would mean that if a priest or a bishop doesn't wear his cassock, then he would stop being a priest or a bishop of a parish. That if he does any of these other 8 things, he becomes a monk, for instance, he would lose his parish. And that would mean all these things would have to apply to the Pope. So we should find in the teachings of the church that if a Pope doesn't wear his clerical garb, such as the popes under persecution in the first 300 years, they would be out. So if you saw St. Peter walking down the street, you would not know that it was St. Peter. You would not know that he was a priest. So according to this canon law, St. Peter, St. Linus, St. Peter, St. Clement, St. Sixtus, and all the first saints of the first 300 years would all be non-popes, because they went for more than a month not wearing their clerical garb. So that the application of this canon, as it's written, to a pope not being a pope is actually absurd. This canon refers to free leaving of the office. Free leaving, that's what it refers to. A free departure. And that no one forced you to leave, you left on your own. We all know, for instance, anybody here who happens to have descended, any person of Western Europe or of America who is of European descent, 100% of them, 100% of all the ancestors here in America and in Europe in 1400 were Catholic. They're all Catholic. But if you check now, you're going to see various Protestant churches. You're going to see apostates. You're going to see atheists. You're going to see all manner of different religions. Why? Because they freely left. They freely left. If you go down to the local Protestant church and ask them, are you a Catholic? They will tell you, I am not. I quit the church. I left the church. I think we have the 3rd Street Baptist Church up here in Louisville. I think it's the 3rd Street, which is dedicated to about several thousand members, and it's dedicated to only ex-Catholics. So if you're not an ex-Catholic, you can't get in. That's the way it used to be anyway. Now they're probably being ecumenical and allowing non-ex-Catholics to get in. But originally in the 70s and 80s, only ex-Catholics. And of course, the head chief minister was a Catholic priest who left the priesthood. And so there are multiple churches like that throughout the world. But you go and ask them, are you Catholic? No, I'm not Catholic. I left the church. I hate the church. I quit. So I quit is essentially what 188 is about. 8 different ways of saying, I quit. You can't make me stay. I am leaving. I am not taking position. I refuse to be a priest. I refuse to be a bishop. I refuse to be a pope. I am out of here, and I don't care what you say. This would be the case, for instance, of Cardinal Siri, with the Siri theory. If Cardinal Siri really was elected pope, maybe he was, he said, I refuse. I do not accept the office. And I'm not going to be pope. So therefore, he's not the pope. And there must have been many others in history who were elected that also said, no, I refuse. And they left. And they never took possession of the office. And they never acted as pope. Or they were and they quit, such as Pope Benedict has quit. He quit. He left. There's an argument now that some say that, well, maybe he's still the pope. He quit. He demonstrated most clearly, I quit. It's in the first category of pre-resignation. The second category is being coerced out, being forced out. And being forced out means a legitimate superior kicks you out. That can't apply to a pope because there is no legitimate superior of a pope. There is no superior for a pope. And hoping that mouse shows up in my papers here. But, so in any case, he's got the original papers. We had a problem copying the papers, and then the copy machine wasn't working. Taking the computer. Yeah. So, in any case, what are the conditions? It goes in my outline, but my outline is different from his outline. And so, the case of a pope being in the church, if you remember correctly here, we're asked the question is, can a heretic be pope? Canon 188 has nothing to do with it. So can a heretic be pope? Well, the first question is, what's a heretic, right? What is a heretic? What is the heretic? And a very good point was made by Father Clifford Fenton, who was I think he was a Jesuit priest now, and he was in charge of American Ecclesiastical Review back in the 1940s and 50s, and he was fighting very much against the modernism that was developing in the church, and he was one of the fighters against it. And unfortunately, of course, obviously he didn't succeed with the whole Vatican II onslaught, but he points out very well the proper theology of this membership of the church. And one of the points that he makes is that the can you grab Chris out there? Seminary, Chris, he just went right by. Right. He went to the left there. He's in the van. Just grab him. So one of the points that he makes, which is quite good, is that the meaning of the word heretic was changed by a theologian named Franzlin back in the late 19th century. The meaning of the word changed. It's interesting because it may have not been intentional, but it's essentially a communist technique, right? It's a communist technique. And that, you know, the meaning of the word heresy changed. What does the word heresy mean? Heresy means someone that simply, Chris, you got my...
He's coming.
Chris, you got my little stick. It's upstairs probably somewhere. So the meaning of the word heresy has changed. The best way to compare it is with the word murder. What is murder? Murder is the act of maliciously, intentionally killing an innocent person. So let's compare with murder here. What is a murderer? Murderer. Murderer equals one who intentionally kills an innocent. That's murder. He intentionally kills an innocent. The key is intentionally. If you can't read that, it's because you've got bad eyes. Okay? So he to intentionally kill the innocent. What's murder? The one that intentionally kills. In the May-Carden method of education, if you got how when teaching children the language, we'll note that the important word is always emphasized, and we do it naturally. And what's the important word? Intentionally. In fact, one of the fallacies is called the fallacy of inflection, or the fallacy of changing the the emphasis. And so that so what is murder? Is murder killing an innocent person, or is murder intentionally killing an innocent person? Murder is not killing an innocent person. Murder is intentionally killing an innocent person. That's the definition of murder. So that when we say someone's a murderer, he's one who intentionally kills an innocent. That's why you often have a trial, a case. Don't worry about it. You have a case, and in a case, what happens? You discover that a man was laying in the road and he got driven over by a truck. Okay, what happened? An innocent person was killed. Now there are two possibilities. It could have been an accident, in which case your insurance rates go up, or it could have been intentionally, in which case it's murder. So so when you say an innocent person is killed, an innocent person died by a vehicle hitting him. Is that murder? No. That's just a death. Murder means that someone intentionally knows his neighbor sleeps in the road, decided to remove his neighbor, put some sandbags and weight in the back of the truck, and decided to go for a drive 2 or 3 times down the neighbor's driveway. Oh, and behold, now, so what happened? We've got an intentional removal of a person. That's a murderer. This is what the word heresy means, and what the word heretic means. Heretic is not one who believes in error. Heretic is not one who believes something that's wrong. Heresy is a thing that's condemned by the church against the teaching of the church. A heretic is not one that believes something wrong. A heretic is one who, the key word here, pertinaciously or obstinately. One who pertinaciously or obstinately denies a dogma of the church. What is the heretic? Pertinacious. If he's not pertinacious, if he's not obstinate, if he's not intentional, if he's not malicious, he's not a heretic. Doesn't mean he's a good person, just means he's not a heretic. I'm not saying he's a good person. He might be a murderer. He might even be a liar. He might be a cheat. He might be wicked. He may not like the truth. But if he does not intentionally, pertinaciously, and obstinately deny dogma, not a heretic. What did Franzlin do? Theologian of the late 19th century. He introduced a common philosophical distinction which we apply to many things legitimately, but not to this. And he said, well, there's 2 kinds of heretics. There's a formal heretic, and then there is a material heretic. This is a common distinction we use all the time in philosophy and theology, material and formal. Right? The formal is what you're doing. Material is the physical thing that's happening, but not necessarily what you're doing. Like so that for when you are sometimes in moral theology we sometimes use the example of the can a person, the formal material distinction, what happens when you're working at the 7-Eleven convenience store and you are selling the products of the owner of the 7-Eleven, and somebody comes in and buys a birth control pill, or somebody comes in and buys, what do you call that, a pornography magazine. There's formal material cooperation. Formal cooperation means you're selling the drugs, or you're giving the product to the individual. You are selling it to him. Material cooperation is the owner is selling it, along with all the other products in the store, and you're simply receiving the money and putting it in the register and taking the stuff that was purchased from the owner. You're in the middle, but you're not the buyer and you're not the seller. So if it's something good, it's not your good deed. If it's something bad, it's not your bad deed. So you're just simply the material cooperator. Here is the owner, and here is the buyer, purchaser. There's a transaction between the owner and the buyer. And the material cooperator is like the table that the transaction takes place on. So it took place, and the dude was there. He was standing there, he was holding something up, and there came the bad magazine, and another guy picked it up. But you don't own the magazine, you would never sell the magazine, you don't approve the magazine, or anything else that the guy has. And not just that, but the good things he has. You don't own the Coca-Cola, you don't own the store, you don't own anything in that store. And so you're not responsible for anything, the good things or the bad things that are sold. You are a guy who works the register. So if you take money out of the register, you're a thief. If you steal something from the store, you're a thief. But and when it comes to this, there's a material and formal. So material and formal is a distinction we use often in moral theology, and also in dogmatic theology and philosophy. There's the matter and the form. So another common example is that we have matter, and we have matter, which is wood. What is this? That is not wood. What is it? It's a table. What's the material? Wood. As far as wood goes, it can be this thing too, right? What's the form? The form of this is a chair. That's the form. The number B here, this is a table. That's the form. What's the matter? Wood. So wood is just wood. One form is chair, another form is table. So matter and form are very important. And then of course, so material and form are very important, very common distinctions. We must understand them. But do you ever say, when there was a car accident, that guy was a material murderer? Because he is a murderer, but he's only a material murderer. No, the word murderer is only for the person who formally, intentionally denies the dogma. That's heretic. So one of the grave problems of this whole question is that before 1880, when Franzelin, the name of the theologian is Franzelin, who invented this distinction, whenever you hear the word heretic, it means only evil, mortal, sin, wicked man who obstinatiously, pertinaciously refuses the dogma of the church, and he rejects whatever the church has to say. I just need one copy because I'll read that quote of St. Augustine.
He's still working.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Because even my original copy that I had in my papers is... And then so, I just want to read the quote of St. Augustine. But anyway, just to paraphrase what St. Augustine has to say anyway. St. Augustine speaks about this, and St. Augustine says that no matter how wicked or evil or false the belief of someone, we cannot call him a heretic if he would accept the correction of the church. So no matter how wicked or evil. So one example, even what Bishop Sanborn gives, is the stupid farmer. The stupid farmer that believes in the four persons of the Blessed Trinity. So the guy's an idiot. He believes in the four persons of the Blessed Trinity. I've actually met somebody who believes in the four persons of the Blessed Trinity. Several of them. We tried the 3 and 4 thing, but it didn't work. We have the 3-4 defense, and then there's the 4-3. So it didn't work. But in any case, he believes in the four persons of the Blessed Trinity. Okay, so if you're an ignoramus that believes in the four persons of the Blessed Trinity, is he a heretic? No, he's just ignorant. He believes what the church teaches, and he believes that there's four persons in the Blessed Trinity. Now, being as he believes that, his mind is in error. The correct word is error. His mind is in error. He is making an error or a misjudgment. He's making a bad judgment. His sin is in the mind. Well, it's not in the will. It's not in the heart. Because it's just an error, of course, it's not a sin, because sin is a free will act. It's not a sin, it's just a mistake. So this is the reason why the divine law says concerning a heretic. What is a heretic? Whom do you call a heretic? One who pertinaciously, obstinately denies the dogma of the church. Denies what the church proposes to be believed. What our fathers have always taught. There's a divine law about that in the sacred scripture. And St. Paul says it in Titus, and then the other one is in the Gospel. Where our Lord says, that only after three, first, our Lord says, first correct your brethren private. Secondly, correct your brethren before a few witnesses. Thirdly, correct it before all, and if you will not be corrected, then let him be anathema. Titus says after the second or third monition, after the second monition, which means the third one, you avoid the heretic. Why is it after the third monition? And as St. Mark Bellarmine points out, and the father of the doctors point out, why do we have to wait for 3 monitions? Because it's a divine law that I am not to consider someone as evil unless I have evidence that he is pertinacious. So that I need to see by divine law that this person is a heretic. Now, the heretic is guilty from the moment he commits his sin. When he says, I believe, I remember I had one I didn't have to have 3 warnings. I remember a lady in the airport when I was 1 or 2 years a priest. No, it was Father. Actually, it was Father Dean in Phoenix. He got the phone call. Somebody called Lady of Sorrows in Phoenix, in our retreat house in Phoenix, Arizona. Is this a Catholic church? He goes, yes, it is. He goes, well, good, because I want to know what I need to do to get excommunicated. Because I hate the Catholic Church. He says, well, today is your lucky day. You called the right place. Because they say we're excommunicated, right? Just join us, And so, but the thing is, another lady came in the airport with me and said, "Are you a Catholic? I hate you. I hate the church." Another lady came and told me, "I want to know what the church teaches so I can spit on it." They were ladies, by the way, all 3 of them. But nonetheless, I want to know what the church teaches so I can spit on it or hate it. You've made it very clear that whatever the church teaches, I deny and I hate. So that's obviously pertinacious, obstinate, and they're making it very clear. I don't know what the church teaches, whatever it is, I'm against it, I reject it 100%. So that's pertinacious, obstinate, malicious. That's where the sin of heresy is. So hence it's possible, for instance, to believe that the Catholic Church teaches that there are 4 persons in the Blessed Trinity. And I refuse to believe that. I insist that there are only 3. Ha! Now, it just so happens that materially, here's where material formal distinction comes in. Materially, what do you have? Materially, you happen to believe, accidentally, it's like a clock that's broken. It's right twice a day. Materially, you believe in the Blessed Trinity. You're a heretic. Why are you a heretic? Because you only believe in it because you falsely believe that the church teaches that there are 4 persons of the Trinity. The heretic is one who freely denies. Think of it like the first condition of a mortal sin. Full of grave matter. Something that's grave matter or thought to be grave matter. So it can be really grave matter or not grave matter at all, but you think it's grave matter. And you choose to reject it. So if you believe that it is a dogma of the church that the sun is made out of cheese, and you say, I don't care, I reject what the church teaches, and if you say it's made out of cheese, then I say it's made out of spaghetti. I don't care what it is. Remember that it's the pertinacious, obstinate denial, and that is the reason why the divine law says, before I call someone a heretic, that's speaking to the person, the heretic, I need to know with a moral certitude that he is pertinacious and obstinately denying dogma. 2 parts of that. First of all, he's pertinacious and obstinate. That's not enough. he has to personally and obstinately deny, this put here, a known dogma, right? So here, remember, it says so that he can be obstinate and pertinacious. But if it's not about dogma, well then he's not a heretic. We have a rule in canon law, a principle of canon law, and a principle of punishment in the Catholic Church, which is it's a good for punishment. It's good to memorize. Then people will think you're smart anyway, but it's good to memorize. This is the law of the Church. Rule: odiosa sunt res regenda. Not at all. It's a principle. It's interesting, I saw a commentary on the New Code of Canon Law, which is interesting, that one of the bad codes of the New Code of Canon Law is the final code. I forget whatever number it is, 1727, whatever number it is. They have less code numbers in the new code than the old code. And the final code of the canon law is Suprema Lex Salus Animarum. The supreme law of salvation of souls. That law does not exist in the 1917 code. So in the 1917 code, there is no law that says Suprema Lex Salus Animarum. Why? Because Suprema Lex Salus Animarum, which all of you you all know that one, right? Most of you Latin scholars, that one you should know. Supreme law is a salvation. This is a principle, right? Suprema Lex Salus Animarum. It's very bad to call this a law. Because it's using the word lex incorrectly, right? The supreme law is the salvation of souls. That's not a law. That's a principle. It's a principle. Principles, there's nothing before them. There's no exceptions to them. They apply always. Once you make it a law, it's one of the secret little evil things of the New Code of Canon Law. There's the obvious bad things, such as people that are not Catholic can receive Holy Communion, the inversion of the ends of marriage, which is, you know, that love is first and babies are second. And this is another one. It's a hidden one, but this is actually very bad. That this is they make this as though it's a law. It's not a law. It's a principle. The supreme law applies to everyone. It's a principle. Odious res regenda is a principle that applies to all negative laws in the church and all negative things. Odious things are to be restricted. Odious things are to be taken most strictly. This is a rule of church law. So that if there is any doubt as to the application of a punishment, the punishment does not apply. So that's why you have leftovers in our law that the innocence, you don't have to prove innocence, you have to prove guilt. A man is innocent until proven guilty. That's an application of odiosa sunt res regenda. No man can be considered guilty unless he has been proven in the external forum to be guilty. Then he can be considered guilty with a moral certitude. But he cannot be considered guilty or treated as guilty until that point. Odiosa sunt res regenda. Now what is he guilty of? Whatever the lesser crime is. If there is a doubt, or it should be, whatever the highest crime that's proven is. So if there is a doubt, a man can be very pertinacious and odious. But does he know it's a dogma? An example of this is the case of abortion. There is a law of the church that says that when you have an abortion, you are excommunicated. However, if you're not aware of the law, everyone knows abortion is murder and that it's a mortal sin. But if you're not aware of the church law that it's excommunication also, you do not receive the excommunication. So there's no awareness of you know that it's a mortal sin, but every sin is a mortal sin that's wicked. Murder is a mortal sin, but murder does not have an excommunication attached to it. Only the particular murder of abortion has an excommunication attached to it. So everyone knows that killing a baby is murder, and you can't do that. But odiosa sunt res regenda. Was there a knowledge of the church law that says if a girl has an abortion, she is excommunicated? If she did not have that knowledge of that church law, she is not excommunicated, and therefore the excommunication does not have to be lifted. So we have so that the odiosa sunt res regenda, and there are other examples. So that when, did you see the speed limit law maybe applies, but the penal laws are different? Odious and rachel agenda. Odious things apply most strictly. So, this is an odious thing, calling someone a heretic. In order to establish that someone is not a heretic, all that is necessary is to have a doubt. Then he cannot be called a heretic. One cannot be called a heretic because he denies a dogma. Denying a dogma means that you are in grave error and in peril of losing your soul. But if you pertinaciously deny a dogma, you are guilty of the sin of heresy. Let me just take one of those to read the... This is not fully completed here. But this is a... he doesn't speak English. So this is Adamowski, and Adamowski is a seminary finishing his first year here, and he is from the land of Poland. And so 9 Sprechen Sie Gringo. Okay, so in any case, the points here, making a little bit of theological track, is kind of a summary of our little treatise on Sedevacantism. I'm just hitting a couple points here. The main points. It's written more like a kind of in the style of a theological manual a little bit, which is just the principal points and a couple of arguments. And of course, it's not complete, but it does have probably the majority of the essential points in there. And we covered some of the things already. Actually, this is a bit in the future. So in any case, what is the heretic? Now, see the first part 1. You see on page 2 there. The elements of the question of papal vacancy. A, minimum requirements for members of the church. We're talking about we already jumped to heresy, what a heretic is, right? And we're dealing specifically with the problem of a heretic, not the other problems, right? What are the requirements to be a member of the church? And minimum requirements for jurisdiction in the church. And what are minimum requirements to candidate for papal election? Just the minimum requirements. So the maximum requirements are you're supposed to be a saint, you're supposed to be a saint, you're supposed to be a saint, you're supposed to be perfect, you're supposed to be perfect, you're supposed to be perfect. That's maximum requirements. And so, but the minimum requirements are, we got them covered. Minimum requirements are what is absolute minimum required to become a member of the church. And because you see that when we deal with the problem of heretic, a heretic is not a member of the church. So what are the minimum requirements? A specific kind of heretic, which can be referred to here. What are the heretic? Some heretics are members of the church, and some heretics are not members of the church. And so we can see that here with what the churchman. St. Orabellum is a great theologian of the defense of the Roman papacy and of the church. And St. Orabellum fought very much against the Protestants. And remember, one of the great errors and heresies of the Protestants is the denial of the visibility of the church. Remember, we know the church is visible. It is not invisible. The church is not in my heart. The church is visible. It's external. It's extrinsic. Not only is the church visible, an example of this visibility of the church is not simply that we have physical church buildings. The main example is that there's a physical, public, open profession of the faith with my mouth. That's why St. Augustine says about his membership of the church that the heart believes unto justice, but the mouth confesses unto salvation. It's in book 12 of the De Civitate, the City of God on baptism. The heart believes unto justice, but the mouth confesses unto salvation. That's what St. Augustine did. That's the scripture quote. And that, what is this? What is the heart believes unto justice? That means I can have my heart in the state of grace. But how do I get saved? There must be a confession of the faith publicly. There must be a confession of the faith. I must be ready to confess the faith. And confess means to profess before men. This is, one of the very important elements or reasons why modern Catholics have lost the faith. Because you are obliged as a Catholic not to believe the Catholic faith, but to profess it before men. And so that the profession of the faith is taken away from us, right? And so souls are being lost because they are stopping to profess the faith. But now there's a minimum profession of the faith, which means you go to hell, by the way, when you do the minimum profession. And there's a maximum profession of the faith. There's a minimum requirement of entering the church, and there's a maximum requirement. So maximum requirement equals saint, 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 saint. The minimum requirement is what's required for validity to make you a member of the church, to make you baptized validly, to make you a valid priest, to make you able to receive Holy Communion. For instance, for valid reception of Holy Communion, you have to be baptized. If you're baptized and you receive Holy Communion, you have a valid reception of Holy Communion. But you're in the state of mortal sin, therefore it's a sacrilege if you're in the state of mortal sin, but it's a valid reception. However, if a pagan comes to Holy Communion and he's not baptized, he never receives Holy Communion. He never receives Holy Communion because he was never baptized. He was not capax of receiving Holy Communion. So that even though the host entered in his mouth, if he never received it, there would be a sin of sacrilege, but it would not be a sin of sacrilegious Holy Communion because he's never received. He's not capable of receiving it. So we can take the host can be dropped on the floor, the host can be eaten by a dog, the host can be carried off into the wilderness, and there's no reception. And the host could be consumed by a pagan, which is the same thing. There's never a reception if you're not validly baptized. But if you're validly baptized, you can validly receive Holy Communion. And that's the minimum requirement to be able to validly receive Holy Communion. But if you only receive it validly, you commit a mortal sin. So what is required for valid membership in the church? Not holy membership, but valid membership. So, Mystici Corporis, number 22, gives a good summary of it, and it's a brief summary of the teaching of St. Bellum, which he spends a bit of time on in his De Ecclesia Militante. And you can read it there on the page 2. It's what Pius XII says. What are the requirements for membership in the church? And we're applying here primarily to the heretic. Baptism, real or apparent, says St. Bellum. In the case of the priest not baptized, Innocent II, it's a mistake. Innocent II, not Innocent III. St. Robert says that he is a member of the church, militant by a visible bond, whereas a catechumen is not a member. So baptism, real or apparent. And the second is profession of faith. So these are the two requirements to be a member of the church: baptism, and secondly, profession of faith. Quoting Mystici Corporis, the encyclical of Pope Pius XII, actually only those are to be included as members of the church, you see it in bold there on page 2, who have been baptized and profess the true faith and have not been so unfortunate as to separate themselves from the unity of the body or been excluded by a legitimate authority. So again, baptism, profession of faith, and have not excluded themselves or been kicked out. Everything is covered there. First, baptism, to be a member of the church. Secondly, profession of faith, you're in the church. You're still in the church if you haven't left it of your own free accord or have not been excommunicated and expelled by the legitimate authority. So, those are the conditions. What is this profession of faith and what's the baptism? St. Robert Bellum speaks about external baptism in the example there in the quote at the bottom of page 2. It's interesting what he talks about. He speaks about a priest that was not baptized, which is recorded by Pope Innocent II. It was discovered, and Pope Innocent II was a pope back in the 1100s. Now there was a priest, he was a priest for 20, 30 years, whatever, he died. They found out, somehow, he was never baptized. So what do we do? He was a priest for 20 years, he's never baptized. So they sent the letter to Pope Innocent II, what do we do? What about this priest? Well, first of all, he's not a priest. Because if you're not baptized, not a priest. He also never received Holy Communion once in his life. He thought he was celebrating Mass every day. But he would never celebrate one single Mass. He never received Holy Communion. But he was in the church by profession, is what St. Pope Innocent II says. He was truly in the church by the profession. And it's interesting because you have the case of the catechumen, who's the exact opposite case. The catechumen has the faith. Or no, he's not the opposite, because the priest had the faith. But he thought he was a priest, he thought he was baptized. And if he discovered while he was still alive that he was not baptized, what would he have done? Immediately got himself baptized. Then he would have gone to the bishop's office and ordained a priest. So he would have been baptized in the morning, ordained a priest in the afternoon, back in the parish the next day. So he would have been baptized and ordained a priest. But the point of St. Robert Bellman is, note what Pope Innocent II says. He is a member of the visible church. Because remember, the Protestants do not believe in the visibility of the church. He's a visible church. He has external baptism. We're not talking about baptism of desire. We're talking about external baptism. Baptism of desire is an act of perfect charity in the heart. Only God can know that. We're talking here about external baptism. For instance, there might be amongst us, and I had a case in the Philippines of a lady that she went to get her baptismal certificate, and their baptismal certificate, and we never found it. Then they went to see what church her mother baptized her in. They didn't find anything. And now she's not sure if her mother had her baptized. So I did a conditional baptism. But the thing is that she was a Catholic for 50 years, 55 years, 60 years. And she thought she was baptized and everything else. She probably was, but we're not sure. So, did the baptism. But there must be many cases of people that just lied. Did you baptize your baby? Especially in the old days. In the old days when if you didn't have your baby baptized right away, then you were in big trouble. You would be ostracized by society. And if you brought your baby in at 2 years old to be baptized, and everybody, well, how come that baby is baptized at 2 years old? What are you doing, right? So a mother might just lie. Oh, I had the baby baptized right away. This is an external baptism. It's interesting what St. Robert Bellman says about it. External baptism and the external profession of the faith. A man comes in and says, I'm a baptized Catholic. Like when you all come here, I have seen maybe 1 or 2 of your baptismal certificates. And there may be a baptized couple here, I'm not sure. But you know that I've seen some baptismal certificates. But if I've got a parish of 5,000 people, can I check all their baptismal certificates? Everybody comes in and hands me the baptismal certificate? No. You come into the church and you say, I am a Catholic. We make an announcement before. But nowadays, for instance, only Catholics can receive Holy Communion. I'm in the state of grace, not living in sin. So you come up the communion rail, I'm a Catholic. I don't need to see your baptismal certificate. You have the external profession of faith. What does it mean? I profess the faith. I am a Catholic. Does that mean you have to recite all the 12 articles of the Creed? You have to say everything about being Catholic? No, you just say, I am a Catholic. St. Robert Bellman says, a man is what he says he is. So that we see here that someone might be in the body of the church does not require the character of baptism, but external baptism. Nothing to do with baptism of desire. That is, I believe you're baptized, you believe you're baptized, we accept you as baptized. If you're not baptized, you can't receive Holy Communion. If you're not baptized, you can't be ordained a priest. If you're not baptized, you can't do anything as a Catholic. So there can be those rare cases where somebody just didn't get baptized and they lied, or they were mistaken, or their parents lied. Are they members of the church? Yes, they're members of the visible church. Now, again, from Pope Innocent II, concerning that priest that was baptized back in the 1100s, the example given. So that reckon someone might be in the church, but only that he might be admitted, since if anyone asks also to be admitted into the church, it will not happen without baptism. Nevertheless, if someone that says he has been baptized, and the contrary is not certain, he shall be admitted. So remember, odiosa sunt res regenda, right? I'm to accept you as you are, unless I've got definitive proof that you're not what you say you are. See, now in the world, your man is considered guilty unless he can definitively prove himself innocent, and then you're not sure. But according to the divine law and the divine, this is part of the divine natural law. Man is what he says he is. I accept you as what you say you are, until I have clear evidence that you are a liar. Until I have clear evidence and solid evidence that you are not telling me the truth and you're not what you say you are. So who is a member of the church? Whoever is accepted peacefully in the church. So Pilawar, to give the practical example of what that means. So you're baptized and profession of the faith. Let's continue. Profession of the faith on page 3 there. What is profession of the faith? Profession of the faith, says St. Bellman, it's the form of the church. What makes you a Catholic? Profession of the faith. External confession is assumed of anyone who says that he is a practicing Catholic. So if it comes and says, I am a practicing Catholic, that's it. We accept him as a practicing Catholic. There must be solid reasons to say that he's not a practicing Catholic. So is this man who comes into the church, who goes to Mass every Sunday, the priest who's up there in the pastor, lives in the rectory, it's the 200-year-old rectory, he goes and says Mass over in the church, is he a priest? He's a priest. Where is this Catholic? Or nowadays, if you recognize the priests in India, very easy to recognize, because they're the only ones who wear shorts. So, so that, but in any case, so the priest, you can recognize, okay, that's the priest, and he's going and saying Mass, he's the priest. And that's a person going to the church, he's a Catholic. And they say they're Catholic, that's it. So, the material heretic, we've already dealt with material heretic already. The heretic is a sinner who maliciously denies a dogma or believes false teaching against the church. And then so there's a quote of St. Augustine. It's there somewhere, but I gave you the essence of the quote anyway. The material heretic, the so-called material heretic is not a heretic. We forgot to finish the material heretic, by the way. He's not a heretic. He's an error. He's mistaken. He could be sinfully mistaken. Doesn't mean he's a saint. But he's an error. He's not a heretic. So now the old days before Franzlin, no saint would refer to someone who's in error as a heretic. The word heretic was reserved only for those who pertinaciously and maliciously deny the faith. The so-called material heretic, because now we have to use the term because for the last 100 years it was brought in. Material formal. Material heretic, we say nowadays, he's the one who believes in the heresy as though it's true. He's a formal heretic if he's pertinacious. He's a material heretic if he's not pertinacious. Which means he's not a heretic. Bad use of the term. But because the term is now used, we have to unfortunately bring it up. So the material heretic, and this is pointed out by Silviera back in 1969, he is not even considered in the issue of the problem of the Pope heretic. Because the material heretic is not a heretic. Which means, not part of the problem. If you believe in the four persons of the Trinity, but you would believe that there were three, if you found out that's what the church told you, and you were told that you have to believe that, then you would accept it, well then you're not a heretic. The material heretic problem is solved. The formal heretic is a heretic because he's a heretic, not a member of the church. The answer is, he is a member of the church, and until his heresy, and his being a heretic, not his heresy, but his being a heretic is public and manifest. Now, the occult or secret heretic, which Reverend Bellman spends some time, it's chapter 10 of his book 2, on the, we have a little booklet to go with this. If you want it, we prepared a little booklet. Again, it's not complete, but it's mostly complete. And it has in it the chapters in question that are of interest for this particular question. And St. Barbara Bellman in chapter 10 of book 2, he speaks about, is an occult heretic a member of the church? The answer is yes. So we got rid of the material heretic. Material heretic first of all, sinner. If he's not a sinner, not a heretic, then no problem. Secondly, if he's a heretic, he can be what kind of heretic can he be? And we have to put the word formal in front nowadays. He's a formal heretic, not a material heretic. We can be occult, or secret, or he can be manifest, or public. Now, the word occult, what all this means is, occult and secret means known only to a few. No precise number given. Manifest public means known to many. Once a few and once many. So if there's 10 people in the room and 9 people know that you're a heretic, that's many. If there's 10 million people in the room and 10,000 know you're a heretic, that's not very many. So many and few is a term that's relative. What's many and what's few? And there's no precise definition as to the precise instant where you go from few to many. But at some point you pass over from few to many. And when you do pass over to many, you become a public manifest heretic. Before you pass over to many, you are an occult secret heretic. So, are there occult secret heretics in the church? There have been many. In the St. Barbara Bellman, we can assume that there are very many in the church. St. Barbara Bellman gives a quote of St. Augustine of the sacred scripture from St. Paul. Find it here. They are in us, but not of us. St. Paul says, behold, these are in us, but not of us. And St. Augustine describes it, they are in us, but not of us. That is, he's speaking here to the occult heretics. They're in us because they're inside the church. There he is. He's the priest in charge of the parish. And that's the faithful sitting in the pew. They're in us, but they are not from us. From us. Which means they are not of our faith. They are not of our charity. So there will be people inside us that are not of us. An example of this are all the cockle that are found in the church. You know, the kingdom of heaven has within it cockle and wheat. And notice what Christ says about the cockle. He says, an enemy has done this. So an enemy did put cockle, did put weeds into the field. And the weeds are not the wheat, but the field equals the church. So the field, here is the field. The field is the church. In the church, we've got wheat and we've got cockle. The wheat is in the church and the cockle is in the church. What's going to happen at the end of the world? There's going to be a judgment. And the angels are going to come down. They're going to gather the cockle. They're going to take it up. And then they are going to bring it to be burned. And the wheat is going to be gathered into the barn. So the wheat and the cockle are both within the same church. Within the same field, which is called the kingdom of heaven in the Gospel of St. Matthew chapter 13. The kingdom of heaven has several parables. Each of the parables speaks about the wicked and the good. Now, the Sedevacantists try to argue the wicked we refer to here are only the morally wicked, but not the dogmatically wicked. Because the dogmatically wicked are outside the church. You see, there is cockle outside the church. There's no wheat outside the church, but there's plenty of cockle. So there's cockle outside the church, and there's cockle inside the church. There's wheat inside the church, and there's 0.0 conditio non period outside the church. So, because extra ecclesia nulla salus, outside the church there is no salvation. You're either in, able to be saved, or you're out and necessarily damned. But if you're inside, guess what? You're still not saved. Only the Protestants get out that way. So in fact, they're in and they can't be saved. I remember the argument one of the parishioners had with a Protestant and being a big huge concrete layer. He was going to beat this guy up arguing Protestantism. He goes, I pity you. Goes, why? Because you can't sin at all, because you can't go to confession. But I'm going to kill you. I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to throw you in the dirt. I'm going to confession tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to be forgiven. Right? That's why I'm a Catholic. It wasn't happening. But the fact is, sometimes you're cockle and sometimes you're wheat, and then you go back to being cockle again, you go back to being wheat. This does not only happen morally, it ain't happen dogmatically. And again, what's the principal focus? The church is a visible society. We are visible members of the church. We know there are wicked members of the church, and there always have been. Like Bishop Sheen gives a very simple example. There can only be a church in which there are saints, in which there can also be devils. There cannot be saints if there can't be devils. There can't be saints if there can't be... Blessed is a just man, it says in sacred scripture. Blessed is the just man who could have sinned, but did not. Blessed is that just man. So, going back to our heretic, what's a member of the church? The formal heretic, who is occult in secret, remains a member of the church. Now, the word occult does not mean We're talking here about the real heretic, the one who pertinaciously, wickedly. So this is a good example of this is the Holy Catholic, who most of you should know about, named AA 1025. AA 1025 is a good example of this. That's anti-apostle 1025. When did he die? 1940 something, right? Or 50. He's like a 25-year-old priest, 28-year-old priest. I think he was under 30. He was recruited to be a priest by the communists, and he was seen to be a very good and holy priest. He was on his way to a sick call, I believe, or he was on his way to sick call or to say mass. He got in a car accident and he died. He had a journal, and they thought, oh, he's a holy priest. He was on his way to a sick call, on the way to say mass. Let's read his journal. Turned out he wasn't that holy. Turned out in his journal he writes about how he was a communist, infiltrated the Catholic Church, didn't believe in God, hated the Catholic Church, hated Christ, hated God, and was becoming a Catholic priest for the specific purpose of destroying the Catholic Church. How did he destroy it? He got in. And so see, Robert Billiman points out this. The wicked priest, what did he do? He entered the church. He disguised his wickedness, because if he didn't disguise it, he would not be able to be an infiltrator. Is that infiltrator a member of the church? Of course he's a member of the church. He went to be baptized. Remember that about marriage, right? You know, we're not married because I don't like them. Well, that's one of the conditions of marriage after a few years. But the fact is that you went and you married him. I only married him, you know, because of the money. Yeah. That's, you know, what's the problem? You're married, right? You know, so you chose to marry him. Maybe you married him for the wrong reasons. Maybe you married her for the wrong reasons. You married, you're married. So the fact is that when we make a choice, the choice doesn't mean we're being holy, we're just making a choice. You choose to join a company, an upstanding company called Enron or Polaroid, and it turns out that it goes belly up the day after you join. You wouldn't have joined if you knew about it, would you? You joined, you're in, and you don't get the benefits. So the fact is, joining means joining. Doesn't mean holy, doesn't mean good, just means joining. Did AA 1025 intend to become Catholic? Well, of course he did. He intended to become Catholic. We have an example of many Catholics do this. A young guy meets a girl, realizes that she's a traditional Catholic. Now, in order to marry her, he has to become Catholic. Okay, Father, what do I got to believe? Well, whatever you said, I believe it. Where do I sign? Right? What do I got to do? You got to step on you. With the Mexicans, you can do anything. I want you to beat your head against the wall 3 times. No problem. I want you to make the Stations of the Cross 50 times. I want you to do whatever you want to do. No problem. Whatever you require me to do, that's what I'm going to do. And then they get baptized. And then you never see them again. But they wanted to get baptized. They wanted into the church. They just didn't want to live good. Very often you might want to go somewhere, but maybe you don't want to be good. A lot of people like that. The occult secret heretic is a heretic who wickedly, maliciously denies the Catholic faith. He enters the church, if he wasn't a member already, by getting himself baptized. These are the Conversos or the Moranos? The Moranos, right? The Jews in 1492, what's her name? Queen Isabella said, you got to become Catholic, and there are 2 kinds of Jews who became Catholics. Conversos and Moranos. The Conversos are the ones who became Catholic, and they wanted to be Catholic. And they believed the faith. The Moranos are the ones who got baptized in the same ceremony, but only not to be expelled from Spain. Therefore, they became Catholics, and they lied. But guess what? They're Catholics. They intended to enter the church in order to keep from getting expelled. This is called in moral theology, or in canon law, this beautiful thing here, we call it in marriage, causa nubendi. Don't ever say a causa nubendi is a causa dissolvandi. That is, a cause of marrying cannot be a cause of dissolving. If you got married for the wrong reasons, that's the reason why you got married. What makes marriage invalid is when there is something against the marriage in the intention at the time of the marriage. Causa nubendi can never be a causa dissolvandi. So this priest, AA 1025, what was this? He entered the church, why? To destroy it. Others entered the church because that's a social benefit. Others entered the church for whatever reason, because, you know, they think it's got nice vestments or something, but not for reasons of faith. And others entered the church for reasons of faith. And others entered the church for a combination of all the reasons, and which one's the most important one? Only God knows. So we cannot analyze the reasons behind someone's entering into the church. He got baptized, he's sitting in the pew, he got baptized, he got ordained a priest, he's in the rectory, he got baptized, he got ordained a priest, he got consecrated bishop, he's in the episcopal office. Bishop, priest, faithful, member of the church. And he might be a secret agent, he might be a saint, and he might be anything in between. But he's a member of the church so long as he remains a cult and not a cult in secret. So the example, he of course internally remains the jurisdiction of the church, like everyone, because the Pope is in charge of everybody. He's internally outside the communion of the charity of the church. That's why St. Augustine gives the example of the quote of St. Paul, he is in us, but not from us. They are in us, but not from us. So that they live in the state of mortal sin, they reject the teachings of the church, but they're staying inside because of the social benefits, or whatever it might be. They're in us, but not from us. And what happens eventually is they'll generally leave, like's happened in the last 500 years, in the time of the great apostasy. So now, then, when does he leave the church? When he manifestly, publicly leaves, which millions and millions and millions of Catholics have done. If there's not someone in your family that hasn't left the church, at least maybe not immediate family, but your first cousins, then probably have to call you a liar. Right? That is in one single family in which, at least at the level of cousins, somebody or multiple people left the church. I don't know of one single family. Immediate family, my immediate family, everyone's in the Catholic faith, but try the cousins. So, but the fact is, there's going to be a departure of the church, either an apostasy or a joining in a Protestant sect, or at least not practicing the faith. Not practicing the faith would mean they're still in the church, just not practicing. So that this is very important, says St. Marvellum, the visibility of the church, because the church is it's a society. We can't check in on every single member as whether they're holy or not, but see, what are they? Are they in or are they out? If they publicly profess the faith, that is, they say, I'm a Catholic, and they sit inside of the pew or they sit inside of the church, they're Catholic, unless one of two things happens. Publicly and manifestly leave. So suppose someone secretly leaves and nobody knows about it. Well, then we're going to still say he's a Catholic. We'll still call him a Catholic because no one knows that he left. It's a case of a secret sin. Remember, sometimes you find out a sin. Turns out someone's living in sin. Turns out someone's committing some sin, but nobody knows about it yet, or only a few people know about it. It's a sin for you to reveal the hidden sin of others. So remember, that's part of that. That would be the sin of detraction. So it would be a sin of detraction if it's known to a few. But when it's known to everyone, then it's a public manifest thing, and the person is to be avoided. So you can see how strict the church is in the consideration of negative things. So that odiosa sunt res regenda, here is AA 1025, he died a Catholic. And Rampolla was probably a Mason, maybe a Satanist. And how on earth did the Catholic Church get infiltrated down the last 500 years? There are many, actually 2,000 years. All throughout the history of the church, there have been individuals that have entered it for the purpose of destroying it. Satan has always had volunteers join the Catholic Church for the purpose of destroying it. What is the name of that high school in Rome? There's one high school in Rome which is designed specifically for that purpose. Rampolla was in charge of that high school, and he had a disciple in the same school who was Gaspari. And the next generation, another one in the same school was Pacelli. And another one in the same school was it John 23rd was his name? Roncalli. and another one in the same school was Montini. Montini, I'm not sure about the other ones. So that you have 4 popes. Rampolla, who was elected pope, but then he got thrown out because of the veto. Pope, what's his name? Benedict XV, I think was one of them. Pius XII was another one. John XXIII was another one. And Paul VI is another one. All came from the same school. The same school that was working to destroy the Catholic Church from within. Now, there would have been many innocent members of that school to know what was going on. But it's clear that there are places where real men are formed in order to destroy the faith. Within Catholic colleges, within Catholic universities, within Catholic seminaries, and within Catholic dioceses for the last 2,000 years. We know there are many wicked, there have always been Arians in the church, etc. So when the heresy is occult and secret, they're still members of the church. When it goes to the level of public and manifest, then they're not. And then, let's see here, we're going to take a station break a few minutes ago, but you don't need that. Usually I don't pay attention to the bells of the seminarians anyway. In fact, the bells are ringing right now, aren't they? See, I don't hear them anymore, but I never pay attention. I just go right through the bells. But nonetheless, but in any case, now requirements of jurisdiction are less than the requirements of bishop. Notice his public manifest heretic. He leaves in 2 ways. He left and became a Protestant. He left and became an apostate. He left and became an atheist or whatever. The other option is he refuses to leave and he is coerced out of the church. And here's we can find that quote of Bilaward. Anyways, the theologian Bilaward says, the one who remains peacefully within the church, he stays in until he leaves on his own or he gets kicked out, and he must be accepted in the church. Now you see to try to apply this to the bishop of you see already applying this to the bishop of Covington, Kentucky, the bishop of Louisville, our local bishop here, of Louisville, Kentucky, the bishop everywhere in the world, the bishop of the diocese. They call themselves Catholic. They're in the Episcopal residence. They go to the Episcopal church and they say the Mass. They live there. They're not leaving. They're Catholic. They may be wicked. They may be in great error, but they're Catholic. They just are what they are. And so that if they're going to be removed, what do we have to do? Because there are some heretics that refuse to leave their pastorate, refuse to leave their parish, refuse to leave the Episcopal diocese, but then they get excommunicated by the church. Then the Pope or the bishops, if they're above them, throw them out. They excommunicate them. You know. So in any case, so what if the secret heretics could have? Now we consider the jurisdiction, and then we'll pack it in here. So the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is authority. Do you have to be of faith in order to have authority in the church? Basically, we say at the beginning that what is required for jurisdiction is less than what's required for membership in the church. For the having of faith is not required. We have the example, for instance, a good example of jurisdiction is a priest that left the priesthood, abandoned the Catholic faith, became a head of a Protestant sect, like if the priest is still alive in Louisville, Kentucky, another priest that I know in India who started his own Protestant church. Okay, he made more money that way. He started his own Protestant church. He's a priest. Once you're a priest forever. What happens if someone is in a car accident dying on the side of the road? That priest that left the priesthood started his own Protestant church, his own charismatic church in Dindigul, India, and he started his own church. If you were in Dindigul, we'll go to Dindigul one day, and you're in a car accident on the side of the road, that old priest, he's an old priest, or in the old days, pretty sure he is anyway, but he goes in, he can anoint you, he can hear your confession. He has jurisdiction to hear your confession. He has jurisdiction to anoint you. Where does that jurisdiction come from? It comes from the Pope and the Church. He has no authority on his own to do that. But because he's a validly ordained priest, Even though he left the priesthood, you can never actually leave valid orders. He only left to practice the priesthood. He's still a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So it is a provision in canon law about excommunicated priests. And if I can find the page on the excommunicated priests here, the rule about excommunication. There it is. No, that's a joint section. Here it is. Rule page 7. Canon Law 2314 of the Old Code of Canon Law, point 1. What about an excommunicated priest? And what can you get sacraments from excommunicated priest? Faithful may, for any just reason, ask the sacraments and sacramentals from excommunicated cleric, not vitandus. That's one who's been designated by the church as a heretic. So, an excommunicated cleric and the excommunicated person may minister the sacraments to the faithful at their request without any obligation to inquire into the reason for the request. It's like our SSPX rule in the statutes that many priests in the society smoke. It says in our statutes that you can't smoke. But it has a rule that you can't buy smokes. But if someone offers you a smoke, then you can have one. A priest may come to you, how are you doing? They can't ask for a cigarette, but they can encourage you to offer one to them. So if you offer a cigarette to a society priest, well, of course, I would lack of charity. Right? But he can't ask for it. And then here it says, so did you coerce the guy to ask? Did you write on a piece of paper, please ask me, give me a cigarette? Did you put a cardboard sign? Please give me a cigarette. Or don't give that, you couldn't say that. Just say, please offer me a cigarette if you want to, but I'm not asking for it. Okay, so did you coerce him? Did you encourage him? That will be an unreasonable comment. What does the code say? You don't have to ask. You don't have to give it. So if you encourage them to ask you for the sacraments, if they ask, that's it. That's how lenient it is. Canon 2314, Canon the 2261 of the Old Code. And then it mentions, of course, the danger of death applies to even one who is vitandus. Excommunicated vitandus, or one excommunicated but declared sentence, faithful may ask only in periculo mortis. In the danger of death, even an excommunicated person who's been declared, you're excommunicated, you're outside the church, you are banned from setting foot on church property, and you refuse ecclesiastical burial, and the name is given, that priest can still hear a confession and anoint in periculo mortis, in the danger of death. If it's not periculo mortis, any priest who is excommunicated but does not have that censure may also give the sacraments. So jurisdiction can be had very clearly for those who do not have the faith. And there is a this red is hard to read here. So is to observe the decree that speaks to the pontiff. That so that the church, because you remember this is an example of the application of suprema lex salus animarum. The supreme law is the salvation of souls. And the church is looking for the salvation of souls. You can kind of see here that one of our big problems in the whole beginning of this Sedevacantism question today is that the primary focus is on the person, not on the doctrine. And we notice this problem all the time. We're focusing on the person, not the doctrine. What do you do if a person is not a heretic? What do you do if he is a heretic? Well, if he's a heretic, the authorities will take care of him. And if they don't, when he dies, the supreme authority will take care of him. Remember that this is one of the proofs, one of the things we know by our natural reason, is that God is the creator and God is the rewarder. We know that God is a remunerator. We see oftentimes wicked men living wicked lives and apparently not receiving retribution. When they die, God will reward them. They will receive their retribution. They will be eternally damned. They will burn by the just fire of God in hell if they do not repent. So we don't need to worry about the punishment of the person. God will take care of that. However, we need to worry very, very much about the doctrine. So here's an example. There is Dr. Spock. So, and Dr. Spock, or Mr. So Dr. Spock is a very nice person. Or how about let's do this? Do this rather. There is Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. So we got two doctors. Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll is a reasonably nice guy, Dr. Hyde is not to be trusted. Now, Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde, one's a good person, the other one's a bad person. Now, Dr. Jekyll is a good person. He says, take 2 cyanide capsules. How do you spell that? It's a 2 I's, right? C-Y-A-N-I-D-E. Whatever. Just take it. Okay. Take 2 cyanides, and if you wake up in the morning, take another one. Now, so I highly recommend it for many people. So take 2 cyanides at night before you go to bed, and if you wake up in the morning, take another one. Now that's the recommendation of Dr. Jekyll because he's a health nut. And he saw a YouTube video on the positive benefits of cyanide. In fact, it's a conspiracy of NASA. And it is a conspiracy of the one-worlders. They don't want you to have cyanide. Cyanide improves brain function. Cyanide removes all your headaches. I'm guaranteed they're going to all be gone. All of your problems on earth are going to cease and you won't remember anything. Cyanide is going to be one of the most beneficial things you can take, and people are trying to stop you from having cyanide. Dr. Jekyll is a nice person. I don't want to hurt his feelings. Then there's Dr. Hyde. Take cyanide. I want you to take cyanide, trust me. Because he's going to take your money, and he hates your guts, and he's going to get a paycheck. So Dr. Hyde is a pretty wicked man. He recommends take 2 cyanides at night, and if you wake up in the morning, take another one. Dr. Jekyll is a saint. He's a holy man. He's a wonderful man, and he prescribes take 2 cyanides at night, and in the morning as you wake up, take another one. What do? I excommunicate Dr. Jekyll. And I excommunicate Dr. Hyde. Or I trust Dr. Jekyll, I trust Dr. Hyde. How about don't take the cyanide? That's a better option. Because the cyanide, turns out, it's not that healthy, and has been rumored to kill many people. Cyanide kills you. Don't take it. So we're going to not take the cyanide. So what is it? What matters is the doctrine. What does the word doctor mean? The word doctor means to teach. The doctor taught me I need to take 2 cyanides. The other doctor taught me I need to take 2 cyanides. Well, if I take 2 cyanides, I'm going to be dead. Therefore, what's the priority when you come and visit someone? Did you know that Dr. Jekyll is actually the same as Dr. Hyde? Same guy. Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde are the same guy. He is Dr. Hyde, he's just acting nice. I can prove it. Dr. Jekyll is Dr. Hyde. Don't trust him. And so they're going to discuss Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. Meanwhile, let me just take a couple cyanides. There goes the discussion. What do? What is your priority when you go to a house and they believe Dr. Jekyll is good, or they believe Dr. Hyde is Dr. Jekyll? What do? Take the cyanide. Keep them from having the cyanide. Preserve them by not letting them take cyanide. Preserve them by teaching them that cyanide causes death, and therefore you shouldn't take cyanide. What is the priority? Solve the problem of the doctrine. Don't worry about the persons. Solve the problem of the doctrine. That's the priority. Then secondarily, once you've removed the cyanide, now we can look into the background of Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. Are they really the same man? Or what are we to do? Now, what about behaving with Dr. I believe Dr. Jekyll is a good man. Turns out he really is a good man. Well, I must obey him. Well, I obey Dr. Jekyll when he tells me to do something which is good for my health. But when Dr. Jekyll tells me to do something bad for my health, although I love Dr. Jekyll, I'm not going to take the cyanide. So the problem we have today is that there is an excessive focus rather on the persons than on the doctrine. Now, why do St. Robert Bellarmine, Cajetan, Suarez, John of St. Thomas, why do they even consider the heretic Pope? They consider him because they're not concerned so much about the salvation of the heretic Pope. God will judge him. They're concerned about the effect of the heretic Pope on souls. Because if we have a heretic Pope teaching us error, it's going to be leading souls to hell. And therefore, we have to be very careful. What do you do? Will God allow such a thing to happen? And for the first consideration we had, can a formal heretic be a member of the church? The answer is yes. Can a formal occult heretic have jurisdiction in the church? The answer is yes. And that's the answer of the Code of Canon Law, the answer of the dogmatic and moral theologians. That yes, he can. Which is the heretic where we have a question mark? He is the one that is called the formal public manifest heretic. What about him? Formal public manifest heretic. And we'll deal with him, I think, a bit later. So, this is 11:39, and today there will be. Oh yeah, we didn't print out the schedules. I will have the print the schedules posted. He did print those out too, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Because basically we'll have the rosary at 5, and then at 5:30 the mass, right? And then and then here the conference in the morning. Lunch is at 12:30. 12:30. In a few minutes we'll take a little break here. But if we're moving on to the next section, do we have any questions or whatever that we can consider? That because the problem of the abuse and heretic, then we go to the 5 opinions of St. Robert Bellarmine. We'll deal with that next. But so that in any case, can a heretic be a member of the church? Yes, he can. St. Robert Bellarmine and Suarez are very clear on that he can be and must be considered to be a member of the church. It is the formal heretic. St. Robert Bellarmine says another thing. He says, when the fathers of the church speak of a heretic being outside the church, not being a member of the church, he says they speak appropriately. In other words, that they shouldn't be a member. They shouldn't be a priest. They shouldn't be a bishop. They shouldn't be, but not absolutely. Because there are many examples. Judas himself was most likely a heretic when he denied the teachings of Christ and maliciously denied them, because he was disgusted at Christ's behavior and so on. So he may have been a heretic himself, and besides being a traitor. And then, of course, there are many examples of those that have denied the faith and still remained an invisible member of the church. And then, but nonetheless, you can be a formal heretic and a formal heretic and a secret or occult heretic known to a few. Doesn't mean private inside of your own heart, and that you will be dead. The formal material heretic, he is dead within the church. He is dead spiritually. He does not belong to the charity of the church, but he does belong to the body of the church. And this is necessary for the healthy function of the body of the church. Because you can't check everyone. You can't do a private judgment on everyone. This will make society unlivable, unbearable. And then, so we can close it at that for then right now. We can go ahead and say a prayer. The cross is that way. We'll just face it the other way. Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost. Saint Vincent and Ferrer, Saint Jude, Lady of Victory, Lady of Sorrows, Lady of Christians, Lady Ignatius. Okay, so then what we can do now is, actually most people can head out, then they'll reset the table.